Okay, so here we are at the entry of August 2024. This picture is a picture of Lake Louise in Canada, which is very near Jasper, the town that is just burning, which is so sad because it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And yet that is part of the world we're in, talking about changes a moment ago and, you know, transportation blockages and doors falling off airplanes, radical political changes. Just when you think something is one way, then there's a whole new thing going on. And that's where we're going to start because I imagine this is top of mind for many. And that is in the recent switch of Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee, most likely for certain, replacing Joe Biden. And, we had talked about that already, about, the fact that I didn't see him going all the way from way back. I mean, I haven't even put much attention into the election because I felt there would be such a big last minute switch. And so I'm not going to go in this class into a lot of detail about her or this, but she is, quite top of mind and all over the place for us. And I think really represents the Aquarian energy we find ourselves in. And you can see that she has Saturn, the planet of mastery, accomplishment, and success, in Aquarius at the top of the chart on the midheaven. And, kind of representing that as she comes into her power, she is, maybe part of the establishment, Saturn, 10th house, but also someone who can be a disruptor, someone who can be part of radical change that is, the part of the Jupiter-Saturn alignment of 2020 to 2040, or Pluto in Aquarius fully from 2024 to 2044. And I think we also saw that just when it seemed that the more conservative forces had a major stronghold on France and on England, that at the last minute there was an election shift, and people who were more progressive, liberal leaning, left came forward and switched the election. And, my sense is that that's what's happening here and is going to continue to happen, and that there's a, kind of a karma here for women to come forward in this election and truly make a difference. Now, she comes in with South Node in Sagittarius and in the area of other people. There's a couple of things that can mean. One is a person who has lived and died by their beliefs for lifetimes and can be very opinionated. And this can work against somebody in the early part of their life because they can, kind of put their foot in their mouth or be too much. People don't necessarily like it. And especially there can be judgment about women who have this kind of strong, fiery soul level nature. And we add to it here with the fact that her moon is in Aries. So there's that independent, fiery spirit also coming through how she embodies emotionally. So her role in this life, her soul level goal, is first of all not to get too attached to her primary partnership, not to be identified by her marriage, but to cultivate more of a personal self and to learn a lot and study a lot, and therefore develop a more open mind, come into a place where she is understanding of all sides of the issues and not just locked in her belief system. Now, her belief system is very connected, of course, to Jupiter, rules Sagittarius, and it's in the 12th house. So there is a desire to pay attention or care for those who are marginalized or disenfranchised, 12th house. There is a certain spiritual quality here, but it's grounded, earthy. And again, maybe, sometimes overly stubborn about one's opinion, but we can see that just before, and the transit chart here is for the time that Joseph Biden went out of the race as the delegate, well, not the delegate, the nominee, and and then very quickly came to support her. This is just after Mars-Uranus alignment, that conjunction that happened a few weeks ago, right on her Jupiter algol in the area of spirituality. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to just bring this chart up briefly to the group today is that there's some things about what's going on in this chart that I would read and spin in a positive way that maybe some more traditional astrologers wouldn't. One, of course, is the fact that this Jupiter's in the 12th house, and the 12th house is seen by some to be completely negative, shooting yourself in the foot, the karma, the hidden enemies. But it's also in evolutionary astrology. It's about your spiritual vocation. And her spiritual vocation, thus in this, is connected to who she is on a soul level and her alignment with partners in a positive way, but not giving herself up, and being someone who can be a champion of, those who are marginalized and in a grounded way. So practical policies would be something that I would expect her to be interested in. Also, I read one forecast where it said they didn't think she could win the election because Saturn will still be retrograde in the election in her 10th house, I think at that point, pretty close to her Chiron. And what I wanted to say about that is that I feel always that that transit of Saturn from the IC, the fourth house, up to the midheaven over 15 years is a climb to the top. It's the climb of the mountain that you're wanting to build something. And when you get there, when you get to that accomplishment, reward, recognition place, if you've climbed the correct mountain, and if you're grounded, solid, deep, you've learned the lessons, this can be the time that you stabilize that success. This can be a great time of accomplishment. And I just wanted to point out that, even though it's retrograde, I feel that, the retrograde conjunct Chiron, where maybe she has some wound about following her intuition and trusting and letting things happen in their own way, which undoubtedly with Saturn so strong, she's had to do around her career. To me, the fact that it's retrograde is not necessarily a negative thing. We can look at it as, the world is kind of going backwards to figure out what needs to be handled before Saturn finishes moving forward in its transit of Pisces. And what's the transit of Pisces about? It's getting serious, mature, disciplined about what's needed around compassion, spirituality, taking care of people who need caretaking. And so I feel like this can be a perfectly fine indication of success at this time. Many other things we could say. She's born in a full moon period. Uh, and so this is a person who can be successful at what she puts her mind to. Pluto is, in the next few years going to be in the 9th house, which has a lot to do with international affairs, which is a big part of any political job at this level. But anyway, I feel like we can really see over these upcoming months a lot about astrology. And I think, in that last forecast that I did where I showed Joe Biden's chart and said, oh, there's so many indications that he's letting go of his career and slowing down. One of the key things we see for her is that the North Node in Aries, which moves backwards, is coming into her 10th house over the next year, um, uh, well, 2 years altogether. And so these next couple of years, she's coming into that Aries warrior power to, you know, implement in her career some life force and vitality. And she's letting go of home family energy, South Node in Libra, where maybe she's, giving more to other people than she needs to. Now, the ephemeris for the month of August, what do we see here? We want to look at always changes. So this month, Venus will come into Virgo, as will the Sun. Mercury will go into Leo, and Venus will come into its own sign, Libra, at the very end of the month, and it spends about a month in each sign. So September will be a very powerful Venusian time. If you're thinking about doing something that relates to relationship, love, marriage, I'm going to guess there's some good dates in September for that. Because the Mercury retrograde is coming up in this month, August. It starts on the 4th. We're already in the shadow period, and it goes through until the 28th. And so this is a month to review, revisit, to edit things, to rethink your decisions, uh, not to worry necessarily. I get people ask me a lot, like if they should wait on like a job offer they got, or buying a house. If you've been looking for a house for 6 months and you find the ideal one when Mercury's retrograde, you don't have to not do the deal. You just need to double check and triple check. Uh, and anything you buy when Mercury's retrograde, I think it's a good idea to make sure you get the warranty. Little things like that, and just to manage the way the energy might be operating for you. Now here we come to the moons themselves, and that gives us the framework for what kind of astrology we are working with in this month ahead. So the new moon, you can see, is at 12.5 degrees of Leo, and we still have Venus in Leo, August 4th, which is this Sunday coming up. Now, come back. A Leo new moon, what is that about? No, the new moon is a new start. The sun and the moon operating together. It's a time to consider what brings us joy, what seems fun, playful, maybe romantic. We can connect to our children very much more strongly in Leo. They embody Leo energy. When you see the joy and the pure laughter of an unfettered child, that's our Leo. When you put your finger in finger paints and, throw it on a piece of paper and just have fun with it, playful, that's our Leo. When you're incredibly loyal to your best friends, when they walk in the room and you tell them how amazing they look, you're so awesome, that's Leo. And this combination is nice stellium. That's part of fortune there in the middle, and part of fortune relates to money and success and expansion in individuals' charts. I don't worry about it too much in terms of this chart, but the Venus in Leo also, last degree. What is it you've been feeling for this last month about your ability to sashay into the room, be that Venus in Leo in some way, enjoy adornment, playfulness, just an energy of good vibration. And because Mercury has just moved into Virgo, there's a little bit of a tail to this, where on the mental level, you're thinking about some of the details. You're maybe analyzing and figuring things out. And this is happening just before Mercury goes retrograde. So whatever's on your mind, coming into this first week of August, know that there's a fiery energy moving forward, but there's also a very strong earth energy taking us backward and looking at practical details. So on the fire side, we see that the Leo, which pretty much embodies some level of the whole sign, right? Because the moon and sun will spread their energy around 10 degrees away from their position. This is in a trine to the North Node and Chiron in Aries, indicating that we're supposed to be developing our fire, our life force, our vitality, the ability to initiate things, new ideas, pioneering energies. And we can go back and say this candidate for president, a woman of color, a woman, person of color. Uh, this is absolutely Aries territory, something that has never been done before. And this actually is one of her historical aspects, is that she's been the first of a lot of different positions. And I think that's her Aries moon, excuse me, in the 11th house of community, that she keeps showing up, doing something that hasn't been done before. And then on that earth level, the Mercury in Virgo takes us to an extra level of analysis to perfect and discern. That is in a trine with Ceres, the asteroid of nurturing, and Vertex. What are the fated connections here that are building something in Capricorn? And then that trines in a general way, Earth-based, to Uranus. That's Algol, the fixed star. We talked about that a lot because Mars-Uranus a few weeks ago joined together on Algol. But the Uranus is still holding that energy of what was that we were meant to break through and come more into transformation and power. And here we have Hygeia for holistic care. So that's one of the things that I'll say about this new moon, is that there's a lot of healing energy here. And we've all been under a lot of stress for a very long time. And where do we start? We can go back to 2020 and everything that happened there. Terribly stressful. I don't think as a world we've even come close to recovering from that. We can go back to 2008 when Pluto came into the sign of Capricorn and started exposing the corruptions. And then there was Pluto square Uranus, and we were testing all of the ideas of the middle 60s, where there was this like launching of revolution and transformation. Endless wars and social issues. Like, we really have a lot to move through our body. And as I'm saying this, it makes me think also of the level of electricity, you know, electrical pollution, excess Wi-Fi's, all of that. Someone recently told me that they were somewhere off grid and how much better they felt instantly. I can certainly verify that when I go anywhere off grid, within 2 days, all of my physical symptoms, all the little aches and pains and weirdnesses, it all goes away. And I sleep like a baby starting around 9 o'clock at night and wake up with the sunrise. It's like so magical to get away from this pollution that we live in all the time. So that will be something to think about if there's any way you can arrange that as we're coming into the fall. It's the harvest period, and we're finishing off summer, and it's time to take care of the bodies as we kind of slow down and orient ourselves for what comes next. we'll see here in this new moon that Mars and Jupiter are almost together, and they will join up in a couple of weeks after that. Mars takes about 2 days to go through 1 degree. So you can just roughly eyeball that and know that, it's already in effect, that Mars is giving fiery action to Jupiter, and that sense of expansion and belief and generosity, and they're both operating in the sign of information. So there's going to be a lot of information out there, and we can certainly see that in the United States with our political process. We're going to be inundated with information from every source, some of it accurate and clear, probably a lot of it fake and, at least squishy on the truth. And so we're going to have to use our Mercury in Virgo discernment skills to determine like what's true and what's not true. We already know that AI has the ability of, creating these deep fakes. Uh, I just saw one last night on Instagram that I was supposedly was Michelle Obama. And I mean, there was no, it looked like her, but it wasn't her. Didn't have her teeth, didn't sound like her quite exactly. This is, definitely scary to me, but we're going to get used to it, and we're going to have tools and tricks to be able to discern what's real and what's not real. Uh, as I said a moment ago, Aries, moving things forward, feeling your life force vitality, kind of connecting to a soul-centered vision of what it is you want to do, and keep letting go of ways that you're vacillating, going in circles, not making decisions, and ways that you give yourself up too much to other people. So we want to give ourselves to the battles that we want to fight, the things that matter to us. We still have Neptune very close to the North Node, even though it's in Pisces. So we are infused with a certain amount of uh, compassion, empathy, spirituality. That's in the sky. Saturn is still demanding that we are disciplined and mature about our spiritual practice. It's just essential so that we don't move into overwhelm and hopelessness about all of the changes that are going on. And let's see, anything else that I want to say? We see if you just look at the center, just get your bearings, there's a big trine that's, the line is very intense. And that's Chiron in the 9th house. Beliefs, philosophies, the law, international countries, and goes to the rising sign, part of fortune. That matters in terms of maybe government, but it's not such a strong, it's not necessarily a strong thing in your chart unless you've got something around, 23 degrees of Leo. A lot of the other alignments are considered not so, sorry for the dog barking, um, not, they're not so strong. Those lines are thin, which tends to mean that the computer doesn't feel like the aspect is a real strong one. But overall, we've got some trines and sextiles, some flow, some light squares where we're dealing with um, tension to bring things together. That tension in general between the Taurus, Uranus, and the Leo planets moving through at this point in time. Now, personally, we want to have more fun, more creativity, and the Uranus and the way it's kind of holding that Uranus-Mars vibration is maybe asking us to break through some of the deeper issues we have and integrate that. So again, what about the body? What about the money? How are we secure and stable? And it's not just about play as we go into this month. And then finally, mid-month, August 19th, we have the full moon. And this moon is at 27 degrees of Aquarius. So Sun conjunct the Mercury retrograde at in Leo. So the Sun in the full moon is focusing our direction to where the Sun is bringing its power and the choice energy. We will be a good way through the Mercury retrograde at that point in time. So the choices you've been reviewing and thinking about, now maybe you'll be closer to taking action. And the moon asks us to look at where are the habit patterns we're letting go of. And Aquarian habit pattern is detaching and dissociating from our needs, being radically changeable, rebel without a cause. It's one thing to be changeable and pivot when we need to, but sometimes Aquarians, just like change for the fun of it, and it can be a little destabilizing. So finding the way to harness Aquarian energy in your heart, we're talking about authenticity and awakening and coming into a good spiritual understanding of what this world is about and being in it, but not of it in the ways that we get dragged down sometimes. I would say we're still with the full moon. We're still invited to be playful and fun and enjoy life. But you can see here these very intense triangles that are called T-squares, where there's a couple of planets in opposition and they have to be joined together in a compromise and a balancing. But each point is in a square to something else. So what we have is a very tight square to Uranus. So topsy-turvy, this full moon has the possibility of some kind of radical change that we can't even imagine. And as humans, we tend to be afraid of change and we tend to be afraid of things being different than we expected. But most of the time, Um, most of the time, I don't even know about that because I want to say in a global spiritual way, I believe that everything that's happening in some karmic way needs to happen, even if it's a terrible thing that we want to prevent and not experience. But there's going to be something about the changes that happen this month that are needed in an Aquarian way in terms of Uranus breaking us out of habit patterns that don't work anymore. So watch that and see how does Uranus have to blend with that Sun Mercury in your own life. Okay, how do you need to be connected to what brings you joy and at the same time be alive, authentic, free? And how do you bring that Uranus to connect with the moon in Aquarius? Well, that's a little easier because the moon in Aquarius also, likes to have that authenticity and freedom. So you might be able to, bring that extra. But Uranus in Taurus is also asking for that security and stability picture. And remember, when you have a T-square, the sign opposite is where the balancing point is. It's where the fourth leg of the missing, the three-legged table that has a missing leg. And that will be Scorpio around 27 degrees. Now, you may have a planet or an angle there. But even if you don't, and there's nothing transiting there right now, so that's why it's a T-square, not a full cross. If you can go deep, Scorpio in a positive way says, look at what is hidden, go deep psychologically and spiritually, transform the unconscious wounds, look at the shadow. What is it that's holding you back? Be honest, be empowered. Okay? And then you can bring that T-square into harmony. Now there's another T-square hanging out there too, where we have Venus in Virgo, opposite Saturn in Pisces, and then that squares to the Jupiter Mars in Pisces, which has already culminated. Mars has now moved past Jupiter during the weeks from the new moon. And so how do we blend those? So first, when we're blending Venus and Saturn, we're looking to have relationship boundaries that are steeped in our sense of self-worth, that we're not being too perfectionistic, that we're so picky that we're not relating at all. We're just negative and boundaried and picky. But we want to hold a certain level of discernment. Venus in Virgo, Saturn, the boundaries, the sense of what we're building, what we really want in the long term, in a way that is about high love, soul-centered love. So whether we're talking about your personal one-on-one romantic relationship, or we're talking about your best friends, people you relate with in general, this will be a month that at that full moon time, and remember, full moon is a culmination or a completion of something. You may be attuned to evaluating your close primary relationships, all of them, and asking yourself the question, is this relationship good enough? Does it fulfill my needs? Do I need to ask for more? Do I have to feel like I'm worthy of more to ask for it? How much compassion do I need to have here? How much particular specific conversation do I need to have to solve problems that maybe I'm not always looking at? And then the square to Mars Jupiter, Jupiter is always engaged in showing us what our meaning of life is, right? And helping us come to a sense of truth. And in Gemini, we do that by learning a lot and synthesizing, and then say, yeah, I've studied Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism and Muslim, Islam, and I have all of these awarenesses, and now I kind of have come to the core concepts that integrate for me. That's kind of a Jupiter and Gemini thing to do. And then Mars brings about this sense of action. So we're not just going to think about it, but we're going to take action based on what we know. And that energy, that belief, action, mental, intellectual energy, has to blend with Venus, your relationships, and with Saturn, what you're building for the long term in whatever part of your chart is Pisces in orientation. So where it is that you're always engaged with intuition, spirituality, compassion, and transcendent creativity. Now, the skip step here, or the missing table leg, is Sagittarius. And that just adds more emphasis to come to the core of what is true for you. You must operate from your authentic beliefs, not from beliefs of the people around you, people who are trying to, encourage you to their way. You have to come to the essence of what is true for you. Other planetary energies around that time, and for the month, we still have Pluto moving backwards, 14 minutes of Aquarius, so almost to into Capricorn, which will be in September. So I think it's about a month. I think it's around September 19th that Pluto goes into Capricorn. So we're in that bridge between the new, the changes, and the old, and Pluto's last sense of connecting into what has gone before, the corruption it's been exposing. And it's interesting, it's not lost on me that, a lot of people are talking about how Kamala Harris's candidacy, with all the excitement and bringing people together on the Democratic side, um, feels a lot like Barack Obama in 2008. And that was when Pluto went into Capricorn. And now, in this very last election, uh, Pluto will be in Capricorn just from September to November, just a little bit past the election. And so we're in this final little moment of time that began in 2008 when Pluto went into Capricorn. And if you just for a moment just stop and think about all the changes in the world and the levels of corruptions that have been exposed in all facets of life, and now we're getting this sense of what the new world vision could possibly be like with Aquarian ideals, and then that will really start to move forward at the end of this year and into next year. Okay, I'm going to stop the share and we can have some questions. We can look at some individual charts of people who are here online today and think about, how these moons this month and the planetary influences are, likely to affect you, or how you can work with the energies co-creatively to bring about the best result. Okay.